whether or not
them.
Christians should become Catholics. And I think that we probably should put the claim as starkly as we can at the outset,
Let's
namely
do it.
that we want everyone to be Catholic.
Correct.
In the sense that, like, it's not like, oh, you're fine, you're Christian. No, we want you to be Catholic. And it's not because we're like colonialist or imperialist or triumphalist. It's because we think it matters for the salvation of your ever-loving soul. And because we think that we got something going here.
Well,
So,
I think, and that's a good...
basically, like, the Church of Christ is so potent, it's so rich, it is so teeming with life, that it's hard to kind of pin it down in an institutional sense.
Yep.
But when we associate the Church of Christ with the means of salvation, which it makes available to us here on the surface of the earth, we find that all of those means of salvation are available in the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
We have the dogma, there is no salvation outside of the church. God has provided the means of salvation through the universal or Catholic Church. But as the Second Vatican Council teaches, it says that the Church of Jesus Christ subsists in the Catholic Church, and other Christians have more or less, more perfect and less perfect connections to the Catholic Church, especially in the cases of those churches that have still retained their apostolic roots. So you have the communities that have sprung off from the Protestant Reformation. Those would be properly called, we don't actually call them churches because they don't have the sacrament of holy orders. They don't have apostolic succession.
But we know that God wills the salvation of all, right? So I'm just kind of contextualizing this. Yeah. We know then that every human being who ever existed has the possibility of going to heaven. We know that there are many people throughout history who had no way of even hearing the name Jesus Christ, let alone the Catholic Church in submission to the Roman Pontiff. So how do you balance? Well, then if we know that they could still be saved without even knowing about Jesus or the church, then God must have his ways, and we don't know exactly what they are. But God offers salvation to all. Somehow in the depths of their soul, they're either responding to that offer of grace or not. If they're striving to live a good life and following their conscience as best as they can, then God's not going to damn them. And the way that the Catechism of Pius X phrases it, he basically says, even though they're not joined to the church in her body, they are joined to her soul in that instance. That's basically what it says. And that has to do with, inculpable ignorance and all that and following our conscience. So
when it quotes this saying from the church fathers, outside the church there is no salvation, it explicitly makes the point that this is not directed to those who are not Catholic through no fault of their own. So that's how the phrase has historically been used. It would be a bit of a reinterpretation to interpret it to mean, the body of Christ in general, because there is a truth to be captured there in reference to the visible institution. If Jesus Christ wants you to become a member of the visible institution of the Catholic Church, and he's serious about that, and you say, I'm not going to do that, and you're not a Catholic through your own fault, then that will jeopardize your salvation. So I wouldn't suggest just reinterpreting this phrase, but understanding it in the correct sense that the church has articulated.
We see the church articulate that it is possible for those who have no knowledge of Christ or his church to still be saved if they are following the revelation that God has given them primarily in nature and in conscience.
Right.
So the question is, does this person is what has kept them from God some kind of an invincible ignorance, something that they cannot overcome? Now, if it's something they could have overcome by investigating the matter and giving it serious thought, and they cavalierly dismissed it because they feel there are more important things in life than whatever God is, that may not bode well for them in the next life. But if it's something they're an honest seeker about and they're trying to find, then I do believe God will eventually reveal themselves to this person. But it's also possible that a person could have other kinds of cognitive defects that prevent them from coming to know God. The Catechism even talks about how one thing that can create vincible ignorance in atheists are the examples of Christians. The Catechism says that sometimes Christians are poor examples of the faith. They teach it improperly, and present a poor example of it that others don't want to have anything to do with whatsoever. And so that would be
if you're
a
taken Jew raised in Nazi Germany and your only experience of Christ is that of the Third Reich.
Yeah, or if you're a Jew living in the Middle Ages and you're being charged with blood libel and you're consigned to a ghetto. But I would say that the understanding that non-Christians can be saved is not a unique one that's modern. I think you go back to like Pope Gregory the Great. He talks about how there is no one who is kept from receiving the fruits of the atonement of Christ's death on the cross. This is something to benefit everyone. Now, as the church articulated this principle, there is no salvation outside of the church. It was primarily understood to mean that those who have come to know what the church is and reject it, there is nothing else that is going to save them. And so it's directed at Jews or pagans or even Muslims who have encountered Christians who have interacted with the faith and have rejected. There's nothing else to provide them salvation. God himself, and I think it's paragraph 1257 of the Catechism, says that this salvation is bound to the sacraments, specifically baptism, but God himself is not bound by those things.
Right.
And so God is able to be merciful towards people and take an understanding of whatever epistemic position he has placed them in.
Okay.
But then the church came to see an understanding that there were people, like in the New World, Native Americans, who could not possibly have, not what our Mormon friends notwithstanding, who believe that Jesus appeared to the Native Americans, that's a whole different topic to talk about, could not have possibly known God. And yet, and yet I would say that it would just seem to me to be such an injustice